Namaste. Seeing so many of you here, I am gratified, humbled, and also terrified because I am not an expert on this topic. I am at most slightly more than a beginner, and the talk is intended for fellow beginners. I will also demonstrate some software tools I am developing to help other beginners like myself. I was hoping I can say tools that I have developed, but at this moment it is more tools that I will develop in future. I am developing because I was doing it even. Anyway, so how many of you here know nothing about Sanskrit meters? Could you raise your hand? Oh, great, excellent. The talk is especially for you. I hope it is useful. To the experts, let me put it on the screen. To the experts, I must, because this talk is for beginners, but to the experts, I must beg your indulgence for firstly presenting the same things that maybe you have seen presented in many places, and secondly for not presenting the same things that may have been presented in many places. Because in this talk I will try to follow a slightly different classification, incorporating different from the standard one, which incorporates a small part of the ideas of a great scholar named Sediapur Krishnapad, which do not seem to have been presented before in English. So at least that can be some value. This was him. He was a great scholar and independent thinker whose highly perceptive and original ideas have whose very keen observation and perception have led to many original ideas which have cleared away, I would say, many cobwebs of confusion, at least in my mind. Many of his insights have the property that once they are stated, they are perfectly obvious, and yet no one seems to have stated them before. This is a mark of genius, like Huxley said about Darwin. Of course, I have understood and internalized only a very small part of his ideas, and I will be able to present only a tiny fraction of it today, and that too in a disorganized rather than his methodical fashion. So do not judge his work by my lapses today. Anyway, enough of introduction. Alam Mati Vistarayana. So I will skip some of the issues of terminology because it was started a bit late. Suffice it to say that in Sanskrit, not all kavya needs to be metrical, but if something wants to be called padya, that is verse form, then it better follow chandas. There is some confusion between the English terms and Sanskrit terms, so I'll just skip over this. It's not important. Anyway, so, but what is chandas? If something deserves to be called poetic, then it must be in some way attractive. There must be something attractive about it. What we will call meter or chandas is one way to make text attractive to the ear. And when it is attractive, it is also easier to commit to memory and easier to recall. This is not a definition, this is just a necessary but not whatever, it's just a description. So it will become clear once we look at an example. This is just one small fragment of some text. I've just written it in 3 scripts. In future I'll only use the Roman script, but for the first one. So this is a single stanza from some longer verse. Ati Vera Taya Tavadurvusha. Does anyone recognize this? Excellent. Yeah. Does anyone want? Okay. Yes. You can. So if you come across a work like this, one can read it. Of course, many people have. It's a very familiar recitation. Let me just try reading it as plainly as I can. And it says, Ati Velataya Tavadurvushahair Anumela Kritair Aparadashatai Baritam Tvaritam Vishashailapate Paraya Kripaya Paripahi Hare. So if you say this aloud a few times, or if you listen to it being recited by someone, I hope you will agree that there is something, this verse has the same something as the string which says na 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 na. This is something what this original stanza and this na 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 have in common. That is the chandas, the prosody. I'm purposefully avoiding the technical definition so that you can see it intuitively. So when we talk of chandas or prosody of a given poem, we are mapping each syllable of the poem to correspond to either something like na, which is a short vowel, or something like na with a long vowel. In the former case, the syllable is said to be lagu, and in the later case, it is said to be guru. Lagu is pronounced for one duration of one time unit, guru for 2 time units. So if you try to map each syllable to either na or to na in this way, taking any poem, and examine when it is possible to map one to the other, you will automatically be led to the technical definition of prosody or scansion, which is if it has a short vowel, it is lagu, otherwise it's a long vowel, and so on. So if you are a beginner, don't worry if you cannot follow this definition. It's good to know it and you can come back and read it, but because this sentence is meant for the common person, it is something that you should be able to hear yourself. You don't need to rely on a definition for it. So the way to, instead of checking how many vowels are there, what is the long vowel, is the vowel long, short, just try to see whether you can map it to na or to na, like a short vowel or does reciting the syllable, does it take 1 unit of time or 2 units of time? Because I started with an example that has been sung, I should make clear that this is not the same as tune or raga or any effect of singing. Because in music, you can sing anything, you can stretch or shrink it, and you can make almost anything match anything. So also in singing, you don't have only 2 options, short and long. You can make something like very long also or very short. So that is not what we are talking about. What we are talking about has to do with recitation, patana, or not singing. So even if you simply read the verse out clearly, in a way that guru syllables take twice the time as lagu syllables, the effect should be apparent. So a text is said to be in chandas or said to be padya if its sequence of lagus and gurus, as we have just defined or not carefully defined, follows some rule or principle. With this, now that this definition is out of the way, let us return to our example. So this poem, as we saw, it was written such that its sequence of syllables follows a certain regular constraint. Namely, each of the 4 lines consists of na 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 na. That is lagu lagu guru 4 times. So that this is the meter. What you see on the right is the meter, which has LL. I have used L for lagu and G for guru, so it has LLG, 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 LLG for 4 times on each of the 4 lines. So this is what a meter means. This particular meter has a name. It is called Totaka, and we say that this poem is in the Totaka meter. And there is another famous poem also which is in the same meter. You can read it. So this sort of simple meter, where you have some sort of short sequence of some short sequence that is being repeated monotonically, repeated is this. He defined it as a meter which has tana or a satana meter. Tana is used in music in many different senses. By careful analysis of meanings, he has decided that this is the best possible meaning for the word, and it's an appropriate terminology. So I'm trying to categorize meter not in the usual way that is done, which is Vritta and Jati, but I'll try to go from simple meters to more complicated meters, hopefully, so that we can stay with the meters for as long as possible. Anyway, so this poem is written such that its sequence of syllables follows a certain regular constraint. Namely, each of the 4 lines consists of lagu lagu guru 4 times. We already saw this. So that was done. Something is being repeated. Here is another meter which also has the same kind of thing, where something is being repeated. So in this case, what is being repeated is lagu guru guru, or na 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 na. Shariram surupam tatha va kalatram yashascha ruchitram dhanam me rutulyam Manashchenna Lagnam Gurorangi Padme Tatakyam 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 Tatakyam. So, hopefully this is also a famous example, but you can see how, compared to just plain text, by making the syllables have this property, it is very pleasing to the ear and you can remember it for more. Actually, at this point, I should probably demonstrate what it is that my tool does. So, if you did not know, if you are not able to talk to, say it out loud and identify this meter, you can go to this website. I will give you the link at the end of the talk, and click on a button, and it will tell you that this is the identifier of the meter. It will tell you that what the meter is. It will tell you, it will show you the syllables of your thing in with logos in medium font and Guru and bold font and so on. So I'm still working on this, and there are many more improvements, but this is a start. And to return to the king. So again, we saw two meters which are of the simple form where something is being repeated. Here is one thing which has just Lagu Guru, which is na 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 repeated 8 times. This is again from this. Can anyone recognize where this is from? Yes, everybody. Good. So this is from the Ganesha Pancharatna Stotra, Mudakaratha Modakam and so on. So again, I will recite. Each line has na 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 Nitanta Kanta Danta Kanti Manta Kanta Katmajam Achitya Rupa Mantahina Mantaraya Krintanam Vidantare Nirantaram Vasantameva Yoginam Tamekadantame Tam Vichintayami Santatam. This is again, these famous sutras are super hits, precisely to a very large part because of the meter and also how the poet has used the syllables of the meter. For example, where the meter has guru, he has put prasa, alliteration and so on. Anyway. So those were the simple satana meters where something is simply being repeated. Sometimes you find them with, especially in stotras, you find them with some minor variations. So if you have 4 units of guru lagu lagu, you may want to make the last one guru guru instead, just so that because naturally at the end of a line there is some sort of a pause, and if something ends in a lagu, it does not. It is contrary to what we want, what our natural instinct is. So this is again another famous thing. So guru lagu lagu, right? So na 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 na. Brahma murari surarchita lingam nirmala bhashita sobhita lingam janmaja dukkha vinashaka lingam tat pranamami sadashiva lingam. Apologies for if I sang it badly, but at least I hope you can see that it follows some pattern. So that I'm just introducing. So another sort of variation you can make, which is found starting with a very, again, not going far from the simple repetition, is again you start with this guru lagu na 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 na, and this the Mahishasura Madhyam Sutra, it has, it's mostly the same guru lagu lagu na 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 8 times, except the first time it has replaced it with 4 lagus. Note that guru lagu lagu has total of 4 matras. The guru has 2 units and lagu is 1 each, so it has 4 matras, and with the replacement still has 4 matras. And also the last one, it has replaced by just a guru instead of guru lagu. This is called an unagana. So this is basically there so that you can either pause or elongate, so that you don't the next, so at least so that the end of the line is audible. Again, I think everybody knows this. Does someone want to recite? No? Okay. I will read it once. This is again, you would have either recited it or heard it around you from cassettes and so on. So anyway, this is a famous one. Ayigiri Nandini Nandita Medini Vishwa Vinodini Nandinute. So when you say Nandinute, you would either pause at the end, you would either pause, or you would say Nandinute and elongate it so that it fits the tala. So this again, this such long meters don't usually have may not have names, or they may have names but they are very unusual, and different sources will have different names for them. So according to some sources, this meter has a name of Hamsagati. According to the source I incorporated into the website, it has some other name, but no matter. This is using some other name, but anyway, it again shows the name of the meter, shows you how to read it. So ideally, I would want to show you each of those blocks of 4 matra duration. I was hoping that it will be working now, but maybe if somebody is watching this on video, then by the time the video is uploaded, hopefully it will. Back to it. Interestingly, so as I said, the first thing has been changed to 4 lagus, and otherwise mostly it's the Guru lagu, na 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 na, which is so strong, so powerful that we see that this pattern has strongly taken hold of people's minds in connection with this word, so much so that many people mistakenly correct the initial 4 lagus into the commonly occurring in the rest of the verse Guru lagu. So most people remember the verse as Ayigiri Nandini rather than the Ayigiri Nandini. So if you search on Google for the correct name, I'm showing the wrong one. If you search on Google for the correct name, it will show you the wrong name, because that is the one that is most popular. It just shows the hold of the repeating pattern on the minds of people. So anyway, these sort of meters where something is repeating, they are the simplest to describe. They are also the least sophisticated. As such, they are also found in other languages. Just because not everybody here may be familiar with Sanskrit, I also have some examples in English. In English, the prosody is very different. It is based on stress rather than matra. So it's based on stressed and unstressed syllables rather than guru and lagu. This is a very subtle thing, and frankly, it's unstable. So it's not always easy in English to have something in a proper meter. It's something of a shaky foundation on which to build anything, but at least there is some, we can see some parallels. So the most common is in English is iambic, which is like lagu guru, which is like lagu guru repeat. So this is just a random poem I picked. So Houseman is lamenting that all his young friends are dead for some reason. He says, "With rue my heart is laden, for gold and friends I had, for many a rose-lipped maiden, and many a light-foot lad. But brooks too broad for leaping, the light-foot boys are laid, the rose-lipped girls are sleeping, in fields where roses fade." So even here you can see that although the principle is very different, some things are common. The stressed syllables get the alliteration and so on. What you see in word on the screen, they are the ones which have alliteration. The alliteration in the unstressed syllables. By alliteration, I mean if the same sounds repeat in the unstressed syllables, it does not contribute anything to the memorableness. So again, in English also we have prosaic, which is like guru, lagu. What in Sanskrit they have Chamra. So this is again another famous poem. Once upon a midnight lady, while I pondered weak and weary, o'er many acquainted curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly rapping, on my door there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping. Anyway, this is the prosaic meter, which like the Nitanta Kanta and the Kanti, but in the other way it keeps repeating. Occasionally we also find some of the other meters annexed. This is the lagu, like the initial example we started with Ativela Daya. So Dorothy Parker is saying in some part of some poem, though the shabby and balanced the splendid, and the bitter outmeasured the sweet. I should certainly do as I then did, were I given the chance to repeat. So there is some, it's a similar rhythm, but sounds different because the principles of English prosody are different. Last example, I think this, before we return to Sanskrit again. So this is dactylic, like the Guru Lagu, like we saw with the Aigiri Nandini and so on. This is Browning writing about Wordsworth. Just for a handful of silver he left us, just for a ribbon to stick in his coat. Found the one gift of which fortune bereft us, lost all the other she lets us devote. They with the gold to give told him out silver. Anyway, it's not on the screen, so I'll not keep it. So, and if you want, just to show that it's the same meter, you can read it like the, just as a joke, maybe you can read it like the Aigiri. Just for a handful of silver he left us, and just for a ribbon to stick in his coat. Found the one gift of which fortune bereft us, and lost all the other she lets us devote. And so on. Just to show you, it's the same meter. Anyway, as we saw, I'm just I'll quickly proceed. So one variation is to replace. So we saw simple meters where something is repeating. One variation is to replace something like Guru Lagu Lagu with something that has the same duration, 4 matras, with either 4 lagus or Guru Guru. If you do this everywhere, we get meters of the Matra Jati class. For example, the popular Muhammadgar or Vajagovinam Sutras are written such that they break in groups of 4. In fact, they break in groups of 2, but that's not. They happen to not have any group of 4 that cannot be broken as 2. But I think that's it's 2. We don't hear 2s. So when we have repeating groups with the same number of matras, Saidip has a term for it. He calls it laya. This is a word that is used in many senses by many people, but after careful analysis, he presents this as a useful meaning of the word. Namely, he uses the word laya when we have different units repeating which have the same number of matras. That is, if you can perceive some avarta at periodic intervals. So yeah, Muda Jahi Hidanaga Matrishna Purusat Buddhim Manasi Vitrishna Yella Vaseni Jakarmo Patam Vittam Tena Vinodaya Chittam. Unfortunately, I was hoping that my program will be ready and it will show you these groups of 4. Otherwise, this is quite pointless, but hopefully so. Anyway, and then there are also the popular Arya class of meters, which Arya Giti is also popular in Kannada's Kantabadya and so on. I have also not fully understood them, so I will skip over them. Hopefully with the tool which shows the groups of 4 slowly, I will be able to understand as well, and anybody too. So we have seen 2 kinds of meters. One where something simply repeats, and another where it's not the same thing that repeating, but you have units of the same length which repeat. So he has a unique, he has a very unique classification of these by the total matra duration of each repeating unit, avarta. So yes, so if the first one we saw, which mitanta kanta danta kantim takanta katmujam. If you perceive it is moving very fast, so if and there the repeating unit has 3. So he calls it Duta, and similarly there is 4, Madhya, Vilambita, and so on. Interestingly, you can also have 6, which cannot be broken as 3 plus 3. I mean, 3 plus 3, if something is repeating units of 3, it will also be repeating in units of 6, but we don't care about that. If 6 cannot be broken as 3 plus 3, that is also a special thing, then there is 7, which will always be like as either 3 plus 4 or 4 plus 3, and then there is 8, which cannot be broken as 4 plus 3. Anyway, so this is, you should read it with these examples, they are really illuminating, but since I cannot do justice, I will move on. So as we saw, these are the 2 kinds. So once we have a repeating unit of some length, we can specialize it, we can make it concrete, and that gives you more with us. And he has a very excellent observation that a huge fraction of, we say that Sanskrita has a very large number of rutas, it has thousands I mean, even the small works list at least hundreds, but there are bigger works. If you collaborate them, if you compile them, you get thousands. But he observes that almost all of them, more than 90%, have this sort of repeating length. There is some laya, which meaning there is something of some duration which is repeating. So it's really just special cases of some more general rule. So here are so basically we starting with the small repeating concrete thing. We generalize to some repeating unit. We can go back and we abstracted, but now we can make concrete again and fix a particular pattern of logos and gurus of some fixed length. So, for example, this is Rathodata, which has 3535, but it's not just any 3535. That is a matra jati of its own, but in this case, the 3 should always be Guru Lagu, the first one, and the 5 is always Guru Lagu, 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 and differently in the second group. So this is again, I'm picking famous examples so that there are things that most of you would have heard. Yatra yatra raghunatha kirtanam tatra tatra pratamasta kanjalim bashpavari varipurna lochanam marutim namakarakshasantakam. So I hope you can hear there's something repeating, the 8s are repeating. So another is the 3-4-3-4 pattern. Matra-based, it's called in Canada, and Malika and some. So I will not read this word because I'm running out of time. But again, this is familiar from other poems in Canada, like Doni Sagale Mundeho Gali Dura Tira Vaserali, or Yava Mohana Murali Kari to Dura Tira Keninam. So this 3-4-3-4 is it's a very unique and popular pattern. So anyway, so these said, as we said, these meters which have laya, which can be sung to some tala. And just to be clear, to repeat, when I say sung, I mean that they can be recited to some tala. If you just recite it according to lagus and gurus, it fits some thing. They are the least sophisticated and simplest to understand, but they are also the only ones you can find in English. Despite being unsophisticated, they are very attractive to everyone. So many stotras are in these meters, and they are on the lips of many people. And yet, the bulk of Sanskrit poetry, kavya, an overwhelming amount, like all but a tiny fraction, is not in these Layamrita or Samagati meters. And the reason is these meters are too attractive. They draw attention to the meter itself and the sound of the poem rather than they take the attention away from the meaning. So you will very rarely find narrative literature in these meters, especially the Svatana. So they're okay for stotras. Stotras are meant to play on your tongue and ring in your ear, and they're taught to children, and children, it builds concentration. But for an analogy with English, in English today, modern poetry, we see rhyme only in nursery rhymes and children's poems, even though rhyme is very attractive. Modern poets have almost completely abandoned rhyming verse. I mean, one reason, of course, is that English simply cannot handle more complicated meters, but it shows that the simple things are there in the children's thing. And in Indian culture, I think the equivalent of the Bala Sahitya, children's literature, are the stotras. This is a very nice observation that Dr. Ganesh told me came from Dr. K.S. Ganesh, that in India, stotras are the equivalent of nursery rhymes that you see in the... What we teach children are stotras and not nursery rhymes. So anyway, so for narrative kavya, different meters are used. That's the meters which don't have this thing, and these are really the ultimate in metrical sophistication. They he observes that these originate only in Sanskrit. They have been refined over centuries, and the bulk of Sanskrit literature is in these meters. So these meters are made up of some characteristic sequences as separated by yati or break. For example, this is Mandakranta. Again, it's a famous example. So, you know this poem. So, Shanta Karam Jagashayinam Padmanabham Suresham. So, in this, there is a yati after, so it breaks up as 3 pieces each line. Shantakaram as 1 piece, Bhujaga Shayanam another, Padmanabham Suresham as 1 more, and similarly more poems. Another stotra, Nasta Dharme Navasunichaye Naiva Kamopabhoge Yadyad Bhavyam Bhavatu Bhagavan Purva Karpanurupam Etat Pratyam Mama Bahumatam Janma Janmantareti Vatpadambo Yurvata Nishtala Bhaktiras. And famously, of course, Kalidasa is the first person to use it extensively in his Meghaduta. Unfortunately, I think I'm short on time, so I'll just and maybe people we should probably give for a change of topic. I'll skip over. Anyway, so what makes these meters popular, or how come these meters are very popular among the different possible? So you can make up almost any string of laghus and gurus and call it a meter. In Sanskrit, there are enough words. You have the power to compose in good poets will have the power to compose in anything. So what is the thing? So of course, one is it has to sound good. It has to sound better than prose, and also it has to probably very related. It has to be natural to the language. For example, to English, iambic is very natural. In Shakespeare, you see that the dialogues are written in iambic pentameter, but they do not sound like somebody is reciting poetry. It sounds like natural English, or at least natural English of Shakespeare's time. And similarly, with the very analysis, Siriac observes that what is natural to Sanskrit is neither too many laghus or too many gurus, but some mixed thing, but slightly more gurus and slightly more gurus. So I was saying that iambic is natural to English. Let me show you an example. Iambic and similarly trochaic. This is just for amusement. So Longfellow wrote a poem called Song of Hiawatha. So it is all in trochaic meters, and Lewis Carroll has written a parody of it, which says, "From his shoulder Hiawatha took the camera of rosewood," and so on. It's in trochaic meter. But interestingly, he says this is easy to do, and I should not get any praise for simply composing in this meter. Just only concentrate on the poem. And it seems like a normal prose passage. But if you read it carefully, you notice that he has actually written 16 lines of trochaic tetrameter as prose, just to fool the reader. So it says, "In an age of imitation, I can claim no special merit for this light attempt at doing what is known to be so easy. Any fairly practiced writer," and so on. And this shows that some meters can, and if you read it, it reads like natural prose. So this is an example of something can sound natural in a language. Some meters sound natural in a language. Unfortunately, I have not left time for the really the best meters in Sanskrit, but Shastra criticized, of course, the most famous. So in Stotras, you would have heard it in maybe Kundendu Tushara Harada Vadari and so on. Many of the sutras in Krishna Karnamaka or Mukunda Malaya are in this meter. Amsalam Vitavama Kundaladaram Mandolatam Prulatam. So let me actually show. See. This is Vasanta Tilaka, again, very famous meter that's used in Suprabhatam and so on. So, copying it. Oops. I'll come back. Anyway, but my point was, if you if you are reading anything in Sanskrit and you find a meter and you do not know what to do, then this is you can just paste it in this tool and it will tell you, it will tell you what the lines are, it will show you where the Vasantasarka does not have yati, but it will show you where the Lagu and Guru syllables are and so on. And of course the undisputed king of Sanskrit literature is Anushtup Shloka. It may not be used in the more ornate kavya, but almost all of like the Mahabharata, Ramayana, or Purana, or shastras, and everything is in this meter. One interesting thing about this meter is that it is so flexible. There are some rules which are stated in works, but not all of those rules apply, or not everything that satisfies those rules sounds good. I have some preliminary results from data on how to distinguish what kind of manuscript is actually used in practice and what is not. But it's not yet. It uses the Mahabharata, but I was just pointed out that it's better to use more recent literature. So I'll speak about that. Anyway, just for a change of interest, I think if anybody has tuned out, maybe you can. This is almost a different talk. In the Chanda Shastra Grantha, we see there are some interesting mathematics. I should say immediately beforehand that what you see, the mathematics is totally irrelevant to the poetics. It has absolutely nothing to do with the aesthetics. Very irrelevant. No poet or Rasika has ever cared about the mathematics, and if you are reading poetry, you should also not care. As an example, say for cricket, sports is played for fun or various reasons. You may ask a question like, in an over, how many ways are there? How many ways are there in which 10 runs can be considered an over? Out of, you can score 1, 0, and then a 3, and then so on, and so on. And this is totally useless. No batsman or bowler ever cares about this. It does not help with cricket. But maybe some author who is writing about cricket wonders about this question and tries to answer it. And that is what has happened, we see has happened in the Chanda Shastra Granthas. So, here I'll give you some examples. Even though they are not interesting from point of poetry, they are interesting from the perspective of mathematics. One is the 8 ganas. You may notice that so far, both while giving this, while describing the meters and on the thing, I only gave a pattern of lagus and gurus. But if you look at Chanda Shastra works, you will see that they use some certain shortcuts. For every triple, like every consecutive 3 symbols, they have given a name. For example, if you have lagu, guru, it is called sagana. So this is Mandakranta, which has 4 gurus, some lagus, and so on. You can break it into 3s and more. So instead of describing this full thing of length 17, you can just describe each triple. You can describe by 1 letter. So this is ma, bha, na, ta, and then there are 2 gurus left over, which will say which you describe separately. So this is. It's like writing a number in octal instead of binary. It saves space. It lets you do some error correction because you can describe the meter very shortly in a longer line which isn't that meter itself. So it helps, and it's some sort of a domain-specific language. But I think for a student, for somebody who is trying to learn meters, they should not look at these ganas because it will only obscure the thing. So if you look at the example of Mandakranta, there is a yati after the first 4 gurus. But if you look at the ganas, it's completely misleading, right? Because one of the gurus has gone into the second bar and so on. So if you are learning meters, the best way is to learn some good examples, learn some good poems which are in that meter, and commit them to heart. You will both get a better sense of the rhythm, and you will remember some nice poem. So and don't bother about the ganas. They are very useful for the Chanda Shastra writers because they were writing in a time where you have to worry about transmission errors and what you prescribe does not copy properly and things like that. We do not have that problem, so they're really, I think, should not care. But they're interesting from mathematical. So to remember the names of the ganas, because as we saw, they have, it's hard to remember what is ma, what is ya, and so on. Someone has come up with this mnemonic which says Yamata Raja Bhana Salagam, where you start at any letter and you read from there. So for example, if you start at Ja and read the next three letters, it says Jabhana. That has a short, long, short. It has a Lagu, Guru, Lagu. And indeed, Jagana is Lagu, Guru, Lagu. So it has, this string encodes the names of all the things in a very short length. So this is a mnemonic. Again, it has some interesting mathematical properties, but it's not really worth going into. One thing is, nobody seems to know how old this is. It is found in some 1850s book, but if any of you happen to know where it came from, I would be interested. Also, the tradition has tried to enumerate all the possible meters. So how many meters are possible of length 4, then you say, okay, you can have all lagus, or the last one you can change to a guru, and so on. And this is precisely what is binary arithmetic. It just happens. I mean, if you care about it, you will hit upon this. I think probably the most interesting is the Fibonacci numbers which come up. This is the same question but asked for matras. So if you say how many sequences are there of length 3, I mean how many sequences are there of totally 3 matras, you can have Lagu, 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 or Lagu, Guru, or Guru, Lagu. There are 3. Similarly, there are 4. If you want 4, there are 5. If you want totally 5 matras, there are 8. And then the people started asking how many is it for a general n, and in fact our people who are writing Chanda shastra works, even though this is really not relevant, they have thought about this and they came up with it. So here you will see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on. This is precisely the Fibonacci sequence where to get each number, you add the previous 2. So, for example, to get the answer for 5, you add the answer for 3, which is 3, and you add the answer for 4, which is 5, and 3 plus 5 gives 8. So, people have done that. This is Hemachandra. He has also, you can just see in the last line, the digits are there 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. And he says, you can do the same. So these people are he wrote this before Fibonacci was born. So they're called the Fibonacci numbers, but these people had done it first. And if you care about that sort of thing, this is interesting. So anyway, so I think the moral of this short vignette into mathematics is that mathematics is really a universal thing. It is across any culture. Because the way we are taught, we may think that mathematics was developed in one particular place, maybe Greece or England or somewhere, and came. But it's really just thought, and across cultures, across professions. Anybody who carefully thinks about anything, it will lead to new mathematics. But still, I want to remind you that this is totally relevant to poetry or aesthetics. This will not help you either learn, read, enjoy, compose anything about poetry. It's just something that happens to have been done. So in the last few minutes left, I should probably say what in most talks would have been said at the beginning. Actually, before that, I did not show the useful feature of this tool, which is again, as you saw, you can enter something here and see what meter it is in. It also, for some things, it also has some video. I'm starting to collect recordings, so you can hear how it is meant to be read. Many years ago, Shatavadani Ganesh kindly, he recited some meters, so right now I have included that. And if there are other recordings and they happen to be following all the rules of meter, I'll get it checked and maybe add them so that you can hear what the ways of doing. That's one thing. The other is, this is for a single verse, but suppose you want to, suppose you're reading, say, sorry. So this is, suppose you want to read, this is Bhartarendri has written 3 Shataka, Niti Shataka, Vairagya Shataka, Shringara Shataka. So suppose you are trying to read this, and some particular one you don't know, and you can see they're all, it's all written in a very, the lines are not properly broken and all that. So what you can do is, with the tool, is go to, I think just paste it here. This is the kind of thing I was trying to build, but it's not ready. You can paste it, so including the chunk at the top and everything. It will tell you what are the most common meters. There are some bugs, but anyway, modular that it will tell you what are the meters that probably you should learn if you want to enjoy most of the verses. And then each of them, this is not in a meter because it is not poetry, but anyway, yeah. So there are mistakes. It's not fitting on screen. So it will show you for each of the verses in the text. It will tell you. By the way, this is using Roman script, but there's a button to change to whatever script you prefer. So if you prefer to read it in Kannada script or Devanagari script or Telugu script or whatever, you can just click of a button and you can read it. Anyway, so this will tell you. So somebody who has typewritten has made mistakes. Despite the mistake, it is able to identify the meter. So the Bhartarendri wrote Kadachidapi. Somebody wrote Kochidapi, I don't know how, but it has identified that something is missing here, and it tells you that a guru syllable should come here. And similarly, he wrote Murka Jana Chittam, Natu Pratinivishta Murka Jana Chittam Aradhe. It has identified that the 2 syllables are missing. The Jana, somebody has left out the Jana, but at least you can guess what may be wrong. So even if you are working with the text and trying to find errors in it, this will be useful. Anyway, that was just a side thing. Returning to topic. Okay, in the last few minutes I have left, I'll just say some things about Chandas. So the Chanda Shastra in Dr. Kannan already said a little bit in the introduction. It started as one of the 6 Vedangas, Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chanda, and so on. And it is said that every Vaidika mantra is in some Chandas. The Vaidika Chandas is simpler than the there are fewer. The names are, there are a smaller set of names at least than I think the set of possibilities may be more, but we are only enumerating them at a cruder resolution. Anyway, so every thing has a Chandas. Whenever you are saying the mantra, you are supposed to say it with the Rishi Devata and Chandas. Otherwise, it is believed that it will not have, it will be Nishpala. And it is said that Chandas preserves and protects the mantras from being corrupted. There are some more thoughts on this, on Chandas, which was pointed out to me by from my father pointed out to me due to Shreevatsa Guru of Ashtanga Vijnana Mandira. From the Ambaravani things. Thanks to my father for pointing this out. He, for those who may not know, he was also a very original thinker. I would say that what Sedyapu Krishna Bhatta did for Chandas, he did for all of Indian culture. He has a very independent thought and cast many things in a new light. So, from what I could understand, he uses Chandas in a very broad sense, not just the Lagu Guru pattern, but he uses it as Gati itself, somewhat like. So the word prosody was used for in poetics, but now it's used by linguistics in a broader sense. So something like that. As you will see in many places, Chandas comes from the Chadir Avarane root, Dhatu. He gives an example of how something can enclose will also protect. He gives the analogy of bark around a tree or your head around your brain in different contexts. So in the context of the Vaidika Chandas, he says it similarly protects the Shiksha and Vyakara. He says that to express any particular feeling, there is some natural chandas for it, and if you learn what it is, you will also use the appropriate gati. And he says interestingly that chandas is fundamentally a certain breath. I'll just read the short paragraph. It's in Kannada. ಒಂದೊಂದು ಮನೋವೃತ್ತಿಯಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಭಾವದಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಉಸಿರು ನಿರ್ದಿಷ್ಟವಾದ ಬೇರೆಯವುಗಳಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಭಿನ್ನವಾದ ನಡೆಯನ್ನು ಅನುಸರಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ಸೂತ್ರಪ್ರಾಯವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳುವುದಾದರೆ ಛಂದಸ್ಸು ಎಂಬುದು ಉಸಿರಿನ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಮಬದ್ಧವಾದ ನಡೆ. So that is the thing. And he has said that something in a particular chandas, if done well, if done correctly, it has the ability to induce certain physiological changes in whoever is hearing. Many of the things that he claimed he had demonstrated, I do not know about this one, but there was some related incident, but I think since I'm over time, I will just stop here. Anyway, thanks to the Indian Institute of World Culture and everybody who directly or indirectly organized this. Thanks to Dr. K.S. Kannan for asking me to speak, to Shatavalini, Dr. Ganesh for encouraging me when I was hesitating. I don't know if he regrets it now, but and thanks to all of you for patiently being here for the last 1 hour. Thank you. Yeah.
We can spend a few minutes in a question and answer session. So if you have any questions to ask, you are welcome to ask.
Either about chandas or about the tool that I showed you a few snippets of.
The binary, what is said, should not be confused for the 0-1 binary code in computer science, is it not? Because many people who think that the Guru and Lagu is the binary and that is the computer programming itself. Please clarify as a mathematician.
Yeah. So, Dr. Ganesh, for maybe people in the video, Dr. Ganesh asked whether the pointed out that the Lagu and Guru binary is not. What is the connection to the binary that is used in computers? I think because computers are mysterious and mathematics is mysterious and binary is mysterious, when people hear computers, binary and they tend to associate them. From a mathematical point of view, binary is just a number system. It is whenever you have two things, whenever you write things as sequence of, with two options, it is binary. So today it will rain or not, tomorrow it will rain or not, and the day after tomorrow it will rain or not. If you write down for the 3 days, it is also a binary sequence. And just as that thing does not help you with writing a computer program, this chandas will also not help you with writing a computer program. But from a mathematical, if you are interested in the history of mathematics, then it is interesting that somebody was considering something like binary or different. So usually we use base 10 decimal system with 10 possibilities for each digit. It's interesting that somebody was considering binary many centuries ago. In fact, if you look at there's a Mac Tutor history of mathematics, history of mathematicians. If you look in that site, it lists Pingala as a mathematician and mentions this binary numbers. Now, I don't know whether it is right or wrong to call him a mathematician. If you asked him, he would not describe himself as a mathematician because his goal was something else. But if you adopt the point of view that mathematics is really universal and anybody who is thinking carefully is doing mathematics, then it is somewhat noteworthy. But I think, again, it is not, if anybody thinks that by using this we will do something with computers, probably that is not the case. That much I can say clearly. it is really interesting.
I have a question to ask. What was the propriety in taking 3 syllables as a gana? Why not 2? Why not 4? Why not 5?
Yeah. So let me go back to the thing where the ganas were. Right. So if you take 2, so one option is to take nothing, is to stick with the long sequence where you basically lens 1, and then you have only two options, either lagu or guru, and you have a very long description. If you use 2 options, there will be 4 of these ganas, namely guru guru, lagu lagu, and guru lagu. And there are 4 options, and this will say it is 17 now. It will come down to 5, and you have to remember the names of 4 ganas. If you use 3, you have to remember the names of 8 ganas, and the 17 comes down to 4, whatever. It comes down to a smaller number. The length decreases by 3. So I think 3 is a good balance between the length, how many different things you have to remember, and how much savings you get. Yeah, he has this is a standard explanation given. Sridhar Krishna Bhatta, he has answered this. He says that 3 is the smallest gana and smallest thing. And
as a group, it is the smallest. And even to have the lakshana in a manner where the brevity, where the constraint of brevity is very much, this will be good. And if you have 4, it will be having many number of ganas. To strike a balance between the number of ganas and the length of the foot, and the length of the names,
right,
having a match, having a balance. That's good.
Right. So this is a balance. That particular footnote in the book, I was not very convinced by. I mean, the principle is definitely correct. I was not convinced that it is different from what others are saying. But the answer is definitely that 3 is a good balance between having too many ganas. If you go to 4, you will have 16. If you go to 5, you will have 32 ganas. And even though you can get a lot of brevity, it is not worth remembering 32.
The lakshana has to be incorporated in the laksha itself.
Correct.
So the length of the verse foot,
Correct.
the padyapada, is very restricted.
Correct.
So if you have just 4 ganas, you have to repeat many times, and even one line may not be sufficient.
Yes, exactly. So if you have only 2 ganas, if you stay with length 1, then there is no brevity at all. You just have to say the whole. You have to use the whole length of the padya to simply to.
And the name has to be incorporated.
Yes, and you will not be able to fit the name. If you use 2 ganas, again you get some amount of brevity, but still it is not enough. 3 is the optimal thing where it's the smallest length at which you get enough brevity, but it is also not too much to remember.
I have one more question to ask. Why is it this science of prosody developed so early and so well in India and nowhere else?
I think historically, again, I'm not an expert, so I'm just going by what I have read. I think historically, one great difference in India is what we have is the Veda. People have, or language in general. We have people. There has been this attitude or awareness that the Veda is something precious and language is something precious, and on both of those, a lot of study has been made. I think because it was both formalized as one of the 6 Vedangas, and independently, what we see interest in language, what we see from Panini or Patanjali and so on, which is unprecedented anywhere else in the world. I think this fits with that. That is one thing. The other, I think, is the Sanskrit language itself, which has the ability to create so many, to practically compose in any chandas. Even if somebody makes up a random string, and by throwing coins, they say Guru, Lagu, they throw a coin and say Lagu, Lagu, Guru. Or even if somebody makes a random string, I think there are people who can compose according to that string. So that in Sanskrit, because the language has the power. So there are a lot of meters. There is a lot of things to study, and culturally there is a lot of care about these aspects of language and poetry. That is my guess, but somebody.
Any other question, please?
This is not exactly related to this subject. In English, nowadays, anything computer, you can always sort out the words A, B, C, D, and so on. Whether our Indian languages have that kind of sorting, that our system is up to the Swarakshara, then Ka, Ka, Ga, Ga. Whether there is a system software to sort out these words in that. So even searching a Sanskrit word will be very difficult.
Yeah.
We have to go to this English translation and sort it out.
Right.
Is there any?
Yeah, so there is a way to sort. Unfortunately, it is not yet as easy as it should be. So until a few years ago, people were coming up with custom ad hoc encodings and ad hoc ways of sorting them. Today we have something called Unicode, which is a standard encoding of all of the scripts. So at least what we need to sort is now fixed instead of being ad hoc. And I tried to sort. So Unicode, apart from Unicode, is just an encoding. It comes with something called CLDR, which is supposed to mention local data on what is supposed to come before what and so on. So I have tried sorting with that. It still has some bugs. It does something crude, like it will sort ka before kha, but it is not properly sorting ki before ko or things like that. So I think one of us should submit corrections to Unicode, and in a few years, hopefully, sorting will be good. Actually, I have some questions that were passed on paper about the program. One was, are Matra-vrittas included in the program? Yes, some of them are, the Arya family and so on. The others have not yet been included. Mostly it's because the vrittas were easier to handle, and I've not yet. I do not have a good sense of Matras yet, but now that I have seen some good sources, I will include them. The second was, if somebody gives the name, right now, in that program I showed you, if you give it a poem, it will tell you the vritta. If you give the name of a vritta, can it show you some poems? Or can it show you some examples? Or can it show you the Lagu Guru details of that thing? So the data is there, and I'm working on it, and I think it's a very good idea that to learn when somebody enters a poem, it's good to see more. It's good if they see more examples, and somebody can just use the site to learn more. So that is something to bear with. And finally, is the software generic enough to handle, say, Kannada or new things? Yes. It's right now, actually, although I have not documented it anywhere, if you type Kannada into it, it kind of works, but in principle it could handle Kannada. That was a question somebody gave on paper.